Hello and welcome to the latest installment of PSG Talking. I'm your host Ed, and on today's show, we're talking all about Kylian Mbappe's big announcement, his legacy, and how PSG can move on. Before we get started, let me remind you to subscribe to this show wherever you get your podcasts and leave us a review if you listen on Apple Podcasts. Check out PSG Talk Extra Time over on Substack for premium PSG content. And as always, head over to psgtalk.com for all your Paris Saint-Germain news. All right, let's bring in my guest. We have Marc Damon. Marc, thanks again for coming back on the show. Hopefully, we don't have any technical difficulties like your last appearance, but we are recording this on Sunday, just maybe about an hour after the final whistle. PSG lose 3-1 to Toulouse. What are you watching this trophy celebration? What do you think of this?
Yeah, I'm kind of watching it, and unfortunately, any of the money we saved on Kylian Mbappé is now directly gone into this celebration. So,
200 million. It's
200
gone.
million. So if they had to pay the violinists, they had to pay the fireworks, and it's just a lot of money. So we'll see what they have left to make transfers over the summer.
Can you imagine if PSG they ever win the Champions League? Like, this is what they do for winning League on by, I don't know, 10 points or so. That Champions League celebration, the city may never recover.
Yeah, that one can only dream, but I don't think I think there would be no expense paid. I think no expense spared. I think you'd get the Eiffel Tower, you'd get the parade, you'd get the millions of dollars in fireworks. It would be something.
But that's what keeps us as fans. We keep dreaming about what that celebration might look like.
It's the carrot at the very end of the long stick. Until
then, I got to still keep talking in this damn microphone, doing podcasts, talking about why we lost to Dortmund 2-0 on aggregate. Well, we're not going to talk about that. We did a podcast with Saka recently talking all about Dortmund. I feel like we got all of our feelings out. What I want to talk to you about, Marc, is you've been kind of vocal and you've got sort of a different opinion on this whole Mbappe saga. So let me just set where we are, and then I'm going to hand the baton to you and you run with it. So on Friday, Kylian Mbappe, he posted on his social media channels what I would call a very scripted, a very rehearsed, I would even say a sterile video on his platforms announcing that he will indeed be leaving PSG when his contract expires. And I'll just read a quote. It says, "I will not extend, and the adventure will come to an end in a few weeks. I will play my last game at the park on Sunday," which was today. "And it's a lot of emotions, many years where I had the chance, blah, blah, blah. It's a great honor." You know, he said all the right things, but again, not a whole lot of emotion.
He said it pretty much in the same way you just said that whole recap right there.
Exactly. Now, and we can also touch on this later on. He doesn't mention Nasser Al-Khelaifi, the PSG president. You know, so it was interesting. So let's just start there. What did you think of the timing of the announcement and then what was said?
Timing wise, I thought, I mean, he really had to at that point, because if it's going to be the last game he plays at the Parc des Princes, I mean, I guess he kind of has to beforehand. But, you know, coming off that stinker in the Champions League, it does sort of leave it's not as maybe triumphant or as, depending on how you look at it, it's not as poignant as it might have otherwise been. It just sort of felt like, you know, something he had to do at that particular moment. Probably recorded that weeks in advance, maybe. Like, just had it in the can, ready to put out whenever the time came for it. But like, it just felt very like it felt like a politician, like, when a politician back in the old days when people used to care about this stuff, when a politician would get caught in a scandal of some kind, like they cheated on their wife, or they committed tax fraud or something, and they'd set up a camera and they'd talk for 3 minutes about how sorry they were and blah, 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 and thanking their wives and kids for all their support and all that. It felt like one of those. Like, it didn't have that sort of, this is a great player, triumphantly or sadly leaving, or it just felt like a prepared political speech that he had to make. And if it sounds like I'm being too harsh, I mean, you can interpret it that way if you want, but it's like, that's kind of how he is. So it's not like it's particularly out of character for him to sort of act that way and carry himself in that manner. But, PSG is nothing if not passionate, whether it be the fans, whether it be the ownership, whether it be, sometimes we wish the players were more passionate, but, you know, it, it sort of felt a little anticlimactic after sort of the months of this and quite frankly, all the years of this. So I would say, what he actually said was nice. Like, I think he put the focus on the right people. I don't really care if he's thanking the owner. Like, he thanked the fans, and it's nice of him to thank the fans. Yay, he had to do it, so at least he did it. Thank the people he played with, and it didn't sort of engender any kind of response in me. Like, I didn't get emotional at the idea of him posting
Leaving.
his farewell on Instagram, if you know what I mean.
We all knew it was coming. I do think that just in terms of the timing, could this not have come out before the season and sort of have like, okay, this is going to be my last dance? We all know. Instead, he just like, it was sort of like kept quiet. He never said anything really publicly. And then all the news reports came out, what was it, like January, February time? And now we find out that he actually signed the contract with Real Madrid back in February. So, like, think about how awkward it would have been if PSG did advance past Dortmund. PSG would be playing Real Madrid, and our best player has a signed contract with the team we're playing against. Like, the whole thing was just awkward.
Yeah.
I think it would have been better timing wise just to release that video before the season started. Then he would have gone on the preseason tour. Everybody would have known. It would have been out in the open, no secrets. We wouldn't have Fabrizio and all that. Like, I don't know why you don't do it before the season starts.
Well, I think I don't know. I don't always know what goes on. I've been watching slash covering the guy for 7 years now, and I'm not always sure what his motivations are in situations like this. Um, I think for the average PSG fan, and even the diehard, I think just for the PSG fan in general, I don't think there's a feeling of like gratitude and um really loving Kylian Mbappé right now. And I think eventually that'll come in time. I don't think that PSG fans are going to be mad at him forever, or even that they're all that overly mad at him now. But it's like we just and I shouldn't speak for everybody because I'm not the stand-in for PSG fans. I think when you have a sport like this where the fans are so violently, almost violently invested in everything, in every single kick of the ball and every single play. And it's like everything's life or death all the time. And when you're at a club like PSG where the stakes have sort of been raised over the years and you see this club that's desperately trying to get, the Champions League and can't seem to get it. And you have this guy who, and I guess we can get into just sort of the main point of this, just like I'm going to start with the positives because I think it needs to be said that there are more positives, I think, than negatives. And I think over time, people will remember the positives and forget more of the negatives. And it's a very high possibility that Kylian Mbappe will be the most talented player to ever really play for Paris Saint-Germain. Neymar was very talented, but the Neymar thing sort of went how it went. Messi, probably the greatest player, in the general sense of that term to play for PSG, but he only played for 2 years and he wasn't the same Messi. He was good, but he wasn't Messi. Zlatan, great player, not an all-time great, played for 4 years. Cavani, good to great player, not an all-time great. A lot of these guys that have played for PSG, Kylian is probably the greatest player to play for the longest period of time with the greatest level of production for PSG. And that sort of makes him PSG's sort of greatest all-time talent. Like, And I don't think that's an exaggeration. I think for the longevity that he had, 7 years is a long time to be at PSG. He didn't play for 2 years. He didn't, he was rarely ever injured for any long stretch of time. He was very reliable, always played, was a 200 plus goal scorer, was able to, carry his team in games and win some pretty big games. You talk about the hat trick against Barcelona in 2021. You even talk about the game against Barcelona this year where he scored twice to, in that return leg in Barcelona. There's a lot of moments where you'll go back and be like, this is maybe the best player we've ever seen at PSG, and all of the awesome things he was able to do, and all of the moments and all of the skill and all of the goals. Like, that stuff is really, I think will age very well over time. And I think you'll be able to look back on it and go, this was a great experience. He can come back to the park, get a celebration, universal love. He'll probably, someday he'll be, president of France or something like that. He'll have some big political role, and he'll be somebody that you can sort of look at as a person that you're proud to be a, PSG, you're proud that he was a PSG player is what I'm saying. And I mean, I guess that brings us to the bad part, which is, I think we as fans shouldn't necessarily have to care about the sort of inner workings of how Paris Saint-Germain operates as a club. But because of the internet, because of the reporting, because of just the way that fandom is, we're all sort of really, you and me and, people like Carl and, we're very in tune to the inner workings of how the club operates. And that sort of gives us a more critical eye into these things than I think maybe some other people would have. Because we're not just simply fans. Like, we are fans, but we do, in essence, cover the team.
Mm-hmm.
And when we cover the team, we cover it from a more critical lens sometimes than, the normal average fan that, watches the team or goes to the games. And like, we're sort of enveloped in a different world, I think. And that gives us a slightly different perspective. And I think my perspective is that, and I try to detach myself from knowing all the political stuff of it. Here's a guy who never really felt like he was always invested in what was going on. There was always an eye to something else. It's like you felt like his career was like mapped. Like, okay, I'm going to start in Monaco. Then we're going to take another step up and go to PSG. But PSG isn't even really the real destination that we want to go to. We want to end at Real Madrid. We want to be, he wants to be the greatest player in Real Madrid history or some dream like that. So we're going to use PSG to, get him some experience and get him some training and raise his profile so that he can walk into Real Madrid as the best player in the world. And I guess mission accomplished. That plan worked. He's the best, offensive player in the world. He's the best goal scorer in the world. He's, he is the star of he's the star of this era. He is the best player in this era. And he has taken the mantle from Messi and from Ronaldo, and it's now Kylian Mbappé. So all of his plan and all of his meticulous strategy worked out, and it worked out well for him. Congratulations. But as fans, and I think sometimes we try to overcomplicate this, we just want to feel appreciated. I think the fans just want to feel like the players that play for their team genuinely care about, maybe not the fan specifically, but the club and we're all sort of on this team together. Like, the fans and the players and everyone's sort of in the same boat, all pushing in the same, all rowing in the same direction. our contribution is far less than the players or the coach, but we want to feel like one kind of family. And I think with Kylian, you always felt like here's a guy that wants, if he could be doing something else right now, he would.
Mm.
Or this is not the final destination for him. He's just sort of hanging out until the better opportunity comes along.
And let me
But then
jump in right there with that point, because like take Erling Haaland for example, when he went to from Salzburg, I think, to Dortmund, everyone knew that that wasn't his final destination, and something with the contract, like we all kind of knew. But with Mbappe at PSG, we kind of assumed that he would go to Real Madrid, but it never was really said. And he, signed the contract extension. So I feel like as fans, we were sort of like jerked about a little bit. It was never clear what his plans or his trajectory was going to be. He says, "Oh, I'm from Paris, I'm Parisian. I want to win. PSG are close to win the Champions League." But then he's also, like you said, he has a one eye over looking at Real Madrid. So I just feel
yeah,
like we're kind of being jerked around a little bit. It was
yeah,
never clear his
and it's
intentions.
like I don't think the players particularly care about some of this stuff, but it's like every summer, every winter, almost every day, PSG fans had to read rumors about how Kylian Mbappe was going to leave and when he was going to leave. And they started pretty much the moment he got there. Like, I remember in 2017, the idea was that he might just stay for a year or two before he left, before Real Madrid came in and bought him.
Exactly.
Like, that was, go back and look at it at the time. Those were legitimate articles from legitimate
Mm-hmm.
people saying that he was not going to be here for very long. And to his credit, he stayed for 7 years, and that's a long time for a footballer to stay at one club. So he gets credit, but it always felt like there was coach issues or, he didn't feel like he was being used right, and it was Neymar's team, and it should be Mbappe's team. Like, let's just, if we're going to, I'm going to use a wrestling term. If we're going to shoot, it is a shoot. The person who is leaking all of that, it should be Mbappe's team and not Neymar's team stuff, was Kylian Mbappe. Let's be completely
or
honest about that.
his parents, or
Yes,
someone in
but
his camp. Yeah.
they're all an extension of him. So the destabilizing force on the early stages of that team, where Neymar was, and at this point in my life, I'm not as big a Neymar backer as I was, because, Neymar has sort of done all of this to himself. But the fact of the matter is, Neymar comes in, and almost right away, Kylian Mbappe sort of goes and behind his back and goes, "Hey, this really should be my team." Like, those reports don't come out unless the Kylian Mbappe camp allows them to come out. They were never refuted.
Mm-hmm.
They were never knocked down. And you just felt like from the very beginning, Mbappe was playing political games at every single turn. And you could see it from the people who report on him, the Fabrizios, the Loic Tansis, all the people that sort of are in the sort of orbit, that Kylian was a player that would be protected. And if the Kylian Mbappe camp wanted something to get out, they would get it out for him. And as someone who covers the team, it's very transparent when that stuff happens. It's very obvious too. Like, it's very obvious when a report comes out that a camp wants to come out, because it'll all have the same earmarks of
Well,
like,
who do you think leaked that he? All the news came out in February, and that's when he signed. And we kind of talked about it then. Like, who does this benefit? Who would have leaked this? I thought it was Real Madrid, but do you think it was the Mbappe camp who leaked that out, that he had signed?
I think that the Mbappe camp has a stranglehold on the French
Mm,
media. It's very obvious. Like,
yeah.
he's France's best player.
Why would
He's
they
still
want
gonna
that out in February, though?
he's still gonna play. He's still gonna play for France in
Mhm.
the he's still gonna be on the French national team. So those connections don't go away.
Right.
It's like I just feel like, and this is not to say that this is not what all great all-time great footballers too. It's the Cristiano Ronaldo playbook. Like, this is not anything new. Kylian Mbappe didn't invent all of this stuff. I just think he, as a politician and a manipulator, perfected it. And Kylian was always, to use another wrestling term, he was always the babyface. And any sort of narrative that came from PSG sort of put Mbappe as the babyface and everyone else is the heel. So it was everyone else's fault. They had to fire Emery or, Tuchel or Neymar or Cavani or anybody else. Sort of, you just sort of, the story was Kylian. All the while, he's leaking, to the media that he wants to leave or that Real Madrid are ready to give him an offer. Like, these are not coincidences. That's not how this works. This is a business. Kylian Mbappe is about to be sort of billion-dollar business. And he is an incredibly intelligent, smart person who understands how to use media, to use the press to his advantage. And I don't necessarily begrudge him for doing it, because in the end of the day, the only people he really has to respond to are himself and his family and his teammates. That's really it. Everyone else is just sort of a peripheral character in this story.
But if he wonders, oh, why are some of the ultras whistling at me? If he's wondering why, if he, when he goes back to his very nice apartment or house, wherever, that's why. That's why they whistled at you tonight, is because of
Oh,
what you just
exactly.
outlined.
Exactly. And that's the and that's the and that's the bad side of that. That's the result. You get, it benefits him in a lot of ways, but it doesn't allow him to sort of be beloved. Like, he's traded in a lot of the same ways that LeBron James and Kevin Durant in basketball, in American basketball, sort of, they traded love and affection and being sort of an honored, respected, they're always going to be all-time greats, but it's not like Michael Jordan in Chicago or, even like a Patrick Ewing in New York, or where they're beloved. Like, there's a place they can go where the fans just love them and unconditionally love them. Kylian traded that for money, for control, for the ability to sort of manipulate the narrative and put himself into the best position possible. Like, there's a lot of great athletes that stayed with one team and suffered and lost and always lost, but they stayed loyal and they stayed in situations that didn't always benefit them. Because it wasn't about winning at all cost. There was something about winning with honor. And I think the generation we've seen has sort of lost that identity of, we're going to win, but we're going to win with honor and we're going to do it the hard way. And right
Yeah.
now, you see what Kylian has done. He has manipulated himself to this point where now he gets to walk into maybe one of the best teams ever assembled. He gets to be Kevin Durant and walk into the Golden State Warriors, who've already won, who've won all the time. And now he just basically gets to show up, be great, and win the Champions League. And, in the grand scheme of history, he'll get to have like 3 or 4 Champions Leagues on his resume. And it'll be like, oh, he's one of the great players ever. But, you do trade something for that. It's not,
Yep.
it comes at a cost. And I think Kylian is somebody who's willing to pay that cost. But, if he even cares about his, how he's viewed and his legacy, and, there will be that sense that he could have had a better legacy, even if he didn't win as much, even if he didn't have the same European success that he's about to have. You know, he would have been the all-time PSG
Mhm.
player of all-time PSG players. Like, there would have never been anyone that could have ever touched him. And he would be so beloved beyond belief. Like, he could have seriously become the president of France, the mayor of Paris, or something like that. He just would have been on a different level than any athlete, maybe ever, in that scope. Because, even Messi was kind of you know, he came from Argentina. He's not Spanish. He's not Basque. Like, Mbappe would have had that, but it's not what he wanted. He wanted control. He wanted the narrative. And he wanted to be in complete control of his likeness, complete control of who he played with, complete control of how much money he made, whether it benefited the club in growing anything or not.
Mhm.
And you find that, and as I sort of get to the point here, as fans, we're not here. And again, I try not to speak for everybody, but I think speak for a lot of people. We're not here to be, you know, pawns in Kylian Mbappe's quest to make money and fame. We're not
Especially
like,
when it's so transparent.
yeah, and we're at the point where it's like, it's been 7 years of this. And I sent the tweet out, and I think it's the best way to describe it. It's like, look, in time, we'll give Kylian Mbappe all the respect and the love that he deserves. You got to give us time, though. Right now, it's
Mhm.
like we just don't want to be around him anymore. It's like we just want him to go away and let us sort of be a football club, let us be a
Yeah.
football club again. And like, we need time, we need space. We can't miss him because he won't go away, but we also can't love him because he doesn't really love us back. And
Hmm.
I think that's the trap that he sort of put himself in. And I'm sorry, Real Madrid fans are not going to love him in the same way,
No,
or
absolutely
not
not.
going to even close to loving him in the same way. It's going to be completely transparent and vacuous. And that's just the way it is. And he's signed up for that. That's the legacy he
Yeah.
wants.
Well, and that's where I want to get to next because you're talking about, and I agree with you, he's controlled the media, him and his camp, he's been pulling the strings behind the scenes. He's had this ultimate plan that only he's known and all this other stuff. He's going to a club right now in Real Madrid who control things better than any club in the world. They have the media in their back pocket. They call the shots. They tell Mbappe, you're not playing in the Olympics, and I don't think they're going to release him. So he's actively choosing to give up all of that power and control that he currently has, and he's signing up to be, you know, a member of a really talented squad. But as I tweeted out, sure, Vinicius and Mbappe and Erling Haaland all sit at the same table, but right now I think Vinny Jr. is at the head of the table. You look at what he's done in the Champions League; he's gotten his team to the final. What did Mbappe do against Dortmund? Absolutely nothing. So he's going to a team where the bar is set high and he has no control. Is that what he wants? That's not what he's used
Well,
to.
well, it also sort of, I think, flips in the sense that he'll have plenty of control. He will have absolutely plenty, not in the same degree, but he will have.
Control over what though? Like I don't
Well, I
think he'll
think
have any. I think
I
they're
think
going to
what
tell
he
him
will
where
have.
he's playing.
I think he is a player who will take up the oxygen in the room. He will absolutely take up the oxygen in the room, and that's sort of half the battle to begin with. In that he's the one they're paying to see. He's the one that's going to, bring the ratings. He's the one that's going to, and again, it's not like Spanish football is in some great financial boom right now. You know, he's going to be a difference maker for that league. And he is going to be you don't just stop being a political animal just because you go to a club like Real Madrid. Ronaldo didn't stop any of that stuff. Ronaldo was a political animal the whole way through. He understood what power he had. He understood the leverage that he had. And as long as Real Madrid are winning, Kylian's going to have the same kind of leverage because he's going to leverage other clubs. He's going to leak transfer rumors in the. He's going to do all the same things he did, and you know what? They're going to take it the same way they took it with Ronaldo. At the end of the day, I don't see that big of a difference here. What I see is a situation where this guy now has to, I think, there's no excuse now. He's got to win a Champions League first year. Anything else is a massive failure.
Which is crazy to think, but you're right. They're in the final. Real Madrid more than likely is going to beat Dortmund. They're going to win.
Yeah. And quite
And
frankly, if they don't win it, they're going to blame him.
with this year or next year?
Next year. If they don't win it,
year.
they're going to blame him.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Especially
Absolutely,
if he does another no-show.
Yeah.
It's not like Mbappe at PSG is playing around a bunch of bums. I mean, Vitinha is one of the best midfielders. You know, Barcola is fantastic. Dembele, he knows from the France national team. These aren't a bunch of scrubs that he's playing with at PSG. Obviously, we would love to have a Bellingham or Vinny Jr., but, you know, like, he should do better than what he did against Dortmund. And so if he goes to Real Madrid and he has a no-show there.
Yeah, and that to me is all the stuff I've said aside, the crux of the matter is that he did not keep his word. His word was that he was going to win PSG a Champions League. That was his promise, and he didn't keep it. And that makes all of this sort of hollow at the end because, they had opportunities. We're 0-0 against Bayern Munich in 2020. He's got a wide open net, ball at his feet. They score that goal, they very well might win the Champions League in 2020, and he doesn't do it. So many opportunities hitting the post, just from a performance standpoint. If we're talking about what's the ultimate goal of all of this for a player of his stature to be so hit or miss in those kinds of moments, like it absolutely, I think it absolutely makes the sort of grander point here that this is not the kind of great goodbye that, he might have thought it would be.
And I do think at PSG, he was he's 25 years old, which is young, but this is his prime, and he's seeing Erling Haaland won a Champions League. Vinicius, obviously, his accomplishments at Real Madrid, and I think he's looking at his contemporaries for the Ballon d'Or, those who you would say sit at the same table as him, and they're all winning these big trophies, and he's not getting it done.
Yeah, but why is he not getting it done?
This is a good question. This is a very good question.
I feel like the answer to that question is that he's not invested. I think that's really a major part of it. Like,
he doesn't have both feet in. He's got one foot out looking
in
towards
his
Real
soul,
Madrid.
This is not the place he truly, absolutely wants to be, and never truly, absolutely wanted to be. He liked it. I think he had fun. I think he had good moments. I think he liked the people he worked with for the most part. But at the end of the day, it just wasn't in his soul in a way that sort of would allow you to sort of fully sell out and just completely give 100,000% to the cause. And you saw that in those games against Dortmund. You could tell, like, this wasn't a guy who was completely invested in what was happening.
Well, especially at that point. I mean, he had signed a contract with another club. He knew maybe he had just. We don't know when he recorded that video. Maybe he recorded it in between. There was no match in between the two games, so maybe that's when he recorded it, and he knew it was coming out, and it's weighing on his mind, his shoulders, and it resulted in that kind of performance. I don't think that's too much of a stretch to believe.
No, I don't think it's a stretch at all, and it speaks to the sort of in the fan sentiment. I think is that you sort of feel used in a way. You feel kind of used. You feel like you're part of a prop in a play almost. Like, that this isn't sort of a real relationship where the fans could invest in him as a person. It just felt more like, here's a guy who's on the team He's clearly the best player on the team. He has the most power of anyone on the team. And he's the best player by far, and he's scoring all the goals and he's winning all the games. But there just wasn't that like deep connection that you want with your star. The way Barcelona had it with Messi, where it was like there's just this deeper love and connection, and it went both ways. And it's like, as a fan, you're jealous of that. Like, again, I'm not speaking for everybody, but it's like you want that connection because it's what makes all of this worth it. It's why you root for sports teams in the first place. You don't root for sports teams because you want to see, why do you root for a team? And you think about that. It's because you're emotionally invested, and when the players are just as emotionally invested as you, and it's like you become one being. The players, the fans, it's all one wrapped up, messed up package.
Yeah.
And with Kylian Mbappe, even though he was the best player and even though he was doing all the great stuff, you never as a fan felt like you owned any of that.
Mm-hmm.
It was never like you had a piece of that. It's like he owned all of it. It was all him.
It's sort like you said, it's sort of hard to prop up a player and call them a legend and look at all the good stuff when the club that you love, that player saw them as nothing more than maybe a stepping stone to get where they really wanted to be. And
Yeah.
that's difficult for a lot of supporters to
Yeah.
wrap their heads
And
around.
and this sounds bitter, and I totally understand why this would come off as bitter. But I do feel like we're speaking truthfully here. Like, and honestly, for the kind of level that he played at, I'll take shallow and vacuous, and I'll take it. Like, if you're asking me, would I trade any of the last 7 years of Kylian Mbappe for another guy who was less
Mm-hmm.
talented but cared more?
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't.
No, I
Because
don't think I would either.
I wouldn't either, because he's truly, even though we didn't own the moments in the way you'd want, I mean, we still enjoyed it. Like, it was still fun. Like, having a player that good on your team is really fun, and
Yeah.
it gives you confidence going into any game you play. Like, I don't think I would change that for anything.
But let's call
But
it what it is. It was a transaction, basically. He played that well and came to us and was, compensated. And as fans, like, let's just look at it for what it was. He was here. He did a job. He did it extremely well. But we were never in his heart. No matter how many political videos he puts out, I don't think we really were. I think he always wanted to go to Real Madrid, and that's why, to your point, it's been rumored since, I don't know, second, third year that he was at the club. So let's just look at it for what it was.
first year he was at the club.
Exactly. So it's hard to, you know.
It's hard to, you know what I'm saying? It's just hard to feel anything about this at this
and
point.
and
Right?
that's why we just wanted to move on. Leave us alone for a little while. Just go away for a while.
Yeah, because it's going to be nice to not have
Yes.
to have every single minute of the day
Ugh.
as a PSG fan worried if your best player is going to leave.
Let me
Like,
let me yeah.
and I want to make this point.
Yeah.
I fully understand that Kylian Mbappe is not going to listen to this podcast. I'm very
I
much
don't know.
understand that, but I'm still going to talk to him directly. It's kind of a cheesy gimmick, but I want to talk to him
Are you gonna
directly.
cut a promo? I'm gonna use another wrestling. You gonna
No,
cut a promo on him?
I'm just gonna say this. You know, the last 7 years of you wanting to leave and putting out rumors that you're going to leave, and always using PSG as leverage against Real Madrid and Real Madrid as leverage against PSG, it exhausts us as fans. Like, it's not fun to have to sit there every day and read rumors about your best player leaving. As a fan, it's exhausting. It's tiring. It makes it less fun. And we just wish you would have been more transparent one way or the other. And say, hey, I'm going to be here for 5 years. I'm going to play my contract out, and then I'm going to go somewhere or something. I don't know. I don't know what you could have done differently, but just understand that we very much appreciate what you did, but we also don't appreciate necessarily how you did it. Not a big promo. I just wanted to make that point that he made it very hard for the fans to invest in him and care about him. And we did as best we could,
Yeah.
I think, in the circumstances. I just really wish he would have shown the kind of respect for the fans that he should have. And I don't think he always showed that respect because I think it was too much about himself a lot of the time.
Yeah.
And with that all being said, best player I'll probably ever watch at the club that I root for. You know, best of luck. He comes back. We'll give him a statue. I don't care. But, give it some time. We're not ready for that yet. We're not ready for the big goodbye and you could see it at the park today.
Yeah.
They didn't want nobody wanted any bit of that. And the fact of the matter is he can, pay off the head of the ultras all he wants. And,
ooh, yeah. I saw that.
No, am I wrong?
I don't know if it's been confirmed, but I did see that there were reports that he sort of had some members of the ultras maybe on the payroll, or again, all alleged. I don't know.
Well, they certainly had some nice, definitely organic tifos for him. Absolutely, definitely organic and not staged out in any way. But you could hear it in the crowd. The crowd didn't want any bit of a Kylian Mbappé goodbye. There was no emotion. There was no tears. There was no chants. There was no.
I think that tells you everything you need to know, like you said.
All you need to know. But the fans are not ready for that. They don't want that. And that's what I was talking about. It's like, this was the idea that we're all supposed to just like get on the thank you Kylian bandwagon here, and just get in line and say, oh, thank you so much. We're so happy that you even graced us with with your presence, and we would have been nothing without you the last 7 years. Oh, Kylian, thank you so much.
I bet you he was caught off. I bet you he was caught off guard, and like his mom's like, "No, they're not saying boo. They're like boo-erds." Remember that's from The Simpsons. They're not booing you, son. I honestly thought that he would come out to a big ovation and the club would do something. I mean, that just goes again when you're a politician and you're so insulated, you don't know what's going on out there. And Mark, we're here thousands of miles away. We can see it. Those fans that live in Paris or go to the matches every match day, they can see it. And it seems like he's kind of clueless. I got just a couple of things I wanted to get to before we wrap up. One of them is we talked about we'll never see another player like him or as good as him. But there's one guy who could be returning who has the potential to perhaps be on that level, and that's Xavi Simons. When you talk about Mbappe kind of leaking stories and this and that, do you think he had anything to do with that report that came out that Xavi Simons isn't motivated to return? Because I think a lot of people are ready to get over Mbappe because they're looking forward to him. Do you think his camp put out there this news to sort of kind of squash that excitement and kind of, again, get the fans uneasy about a player everyone is really excited about?
Well, that's very conspiratorial of you, Ed. Very conspiratorial.
Yeah. It came out at the same time as the video. I mean, almost at the same time.
Yeah, I don't know if it's... Well, also, again, to be conspiratorial, Fabrizio very much has the inside track on Xavi. Well, I will say this. Fabrizio, who pretty much has had the inside track on Xavi Simons from the beginning, I don't think he reported that. And he's basically been the guy who's has the connections to that camp. So I would say, sure, those things come out, but at the end of the day, if I'm PSG, I'm like, okay, so if he wants to leave, we'll get what, 100 million for him? He's signed up till 2027. Like,
the problem is, I think
that's pretty cool.
It's been reported
then we have over like 300 million to spend. That'll be pretty neat.
I think PSV Eindhoven gets a substantial part of that transfer fee if he's sold before 2025. So that's why.
Okay, then don't sell him until 2025. My point being, there's no leverage point here.
No.
Like, when you look at these transfer things, you always have to look at the underlying. You don't look at the rumors. because
It
the
was
rumors come and go.
Fabrice Hawkins.
It's
He
a
had the
signal
original
and
report.
it's a signal and noise thing. Like, what's the signal versus what's the noise? And the
Mm-hmm.
noise is all of these reports coming out. But the signal, the thing that sort of stands over the noise is Javi Simmons is signed till 2027. What can he do? He's not going to refuse to play. He's not going to not show up. Like, what are we talking about here? He has no leverage. He has absolutely
Yeah.
zero leverage. So what is
So
his? So that's my point. It's like,
yeah.
forget what the reports say. The reports don't mean anything if he has no leverage.
The
So
report came out on May 9th from Fabrice Hawkins. He was pretty,
yeah,
trustworthy. But now the reports are coming out that that's like a complete lie. That report that he doesn't want to return. So that's why, as we're talking about Mbappe, I'm like, you know what? Is this the last kind of manipulation that Mbappe does, where he leaks this? Like, oh, I've heard that Xavi Simmons, WhatsApped him, and he said he doesn't really want to return. Run with it.
I
Crazier
just
things
wish.
have happened.
Yeah, no, I don't think that's what's happening here.
I
I
just
think
think,
Xavi's his own. I think Xavi's his
yeah.
own thing. And look, PSG will be fine. They're in good enough financial shape.
Well, that's where I
The
want to let me jump in. That's what I want to ask you as we look ahead. What happens if PSG wins the Champions League before Mbappe at Real Madrid and he's not there at PSG? Like, does that have to be the new mission? Win it before Mbappe? Is that kind of
well,
like when LeBron left
I
Cleveland?
very much advise against that being a strategy.
It'd be my strategy.
If you remember back to the LeBron James decision, I'm going to go back to the LeBron James decision for a minute because there's some there. It's not completely equal, but there's some parallels. LeBron makes the decision to go from Cleveland to Miami, and the owner of the Cleveland Cavaliers, Dan Gilbert, comes out with this scathing letter against LeBron. And he says something to the effect of, I guarantee you that the Cleveland Cavaliers will win a championship before the so-called king. I don't know if you remember this happening.
I remember it was in Comic Sans, and I think they did not win until
They did
LeBron
not.
came
They
back.
were a lottery team.
Yeah.
They immediately lost like 80. They immediately lost like 60 games the next year. And LeBron
Well,
went on to
because
win two.
LeBron left them with nothing, basically a bunch of
Yeah, but
they
I
had to
still
burn it down
wouldn't.
to the ground.
But I still wouldn't like go out publicly and say I think PSG
Yeah,
are I think honestly PSG have played this perfectly
yeah,
in the
yeah.
sense that they haven't buried the guy. They haven't been seen as whiners and complainers, which is the one thing you don't want to be, as a whiner and a complainer. I think they've given him the proper sort of amount of respect without, they haven't like, I'm trying to think of a way to say this without being crude, but they haven't pleasured him. They haven't been like, "Oh, we love you, Kylian. Here's your goodbye ceremony, and
Here's
we'll
the
give you like
statue. We're
here's the
renaming it
statue, and we're going to give you the keys to a new
the Parc de
Maserati or something."
Killian.
Yeah, they haven't done that, which is great because it doesn't make them feel like too thirsty. But also, they haven't been like burying the guy either and saying, "Oh, he's such a jerk, and we'll win without him," and he never really wanted to be. They haven't said any things I've said. Like, they've been very, I think, I would say reasonable in the way that they've responded to
Mm-hmm.
this.
Yeah, they didn't know the video was coming out. It doesn't mention, like I said, Nasser Killian. Interestingly, left him out of the goodbye video.
Yeah,
So I
but
think they're
again, you
playing
don't
it
see
right.
you don't see Nasser going after him.
But I think internally, absolutely. I think internally, they're like, we need to build a team because this is our chance. As everyone kind of laughs at PSG, oh, they lost again, billions spent, no title. If they can win a Champions League, kind of think about the Washington Nationals baseball. Like, let's use another American reference. When Bryce Harper left to go to the Phillies, they won a World Series. That has to be the goal internally for PSG. Win before Kylian Mbappe.
Yeah, and the likelihood is that's probably not going to happen. But you
I don't
know,
see why not. I don't see why
but
not. I mean, the Champions League is going to get more difficult both for PSG and also Real Madrid. I think as good as they are, I think the expectations we've seen Mbappe kind of falter on the big stage. in the Champions
Well,
League.
there's that weird new format that we're going to
Yeah.
have to deal with, which
So
is like, I don't even
so I
know.
don't think it's
I
a
have
given
no,
that they win.
maybe, but I don't think, I think PSG should worry about being a well-run football club.
And I
I think
think
that's what they
they
should worry.
are.
I
They
think that's
are.
what they should worry about. And I think the problem with a lot of perception is that the perception tends to sort of trail the reality. So the reality always gets ahead of the perception, and people sort of still have the perception before they sort of catch up to the reality. And PSG are a well-run, smart organization. Like they are in a place where, all like before they get, like, they're going to be really good for a really long time. And there's a good chance in this window of, 5 to 10 years that they're going to win multiple Champions Leagues. There's a really good chance of that.
Yeah.
And I don't
Yeah.
think people have sort of, especially soccer media, because most soccer media is stupid. They haven't
Most.
really caught up to that yet.
Yeah.
So I think they still see PSG as the big money club that spends all the
Hmm.
dollars and gets nothing in return, and oh, they're such an embarrassment in the Champions League. And it's like, look, they had, if we're talking about the expected goals, PSG had like four more. They were like, they dominated Dortmund in
Yeah.
expected goals. The problem was they couldn't score, and Dortmund could.
Yeah.
And it happens. That's what happens in sports sometimes.
In soccer
But
media, they have no idea who warned Zaire-Emery or Bradley Barcola because they're not
no, they
Messi
don't
and
know.
Neymar. They have no idea who these players are.
They don't know that, Vitinha is going to be a top 10 midfielder in the world. They don't get that
Hmm.
Nuno Mendes is coming off of a torn ACL and that
Yeah.
he's still one of the best left backs in the world if he's healthy. It'll take him a while to get back to that health.
Yep.
They don't understand that, financially PSG are in a really good place and they don't have that many exorbitant contracts on the books.
Or that many holes in the squad, and they've
Not
got
that many
200 million
holes.
to
They
spend with
need
Mbappe moving.
they need some center. They need to spend money on some center backs.
Yep.
But
Agreed.
beside, they have to get better in the air. But like this is year one, really kind of year two of the Campos era, but year
Hmm.
one of the Enrique Campos era. Like if you can keep this together, PSG are going to be just fine. They're going to be in Champions League finals. They're going to win
Hmm.
Champions Leagues. They're going to be good in Ligue 1. They're going to win the title pretty much every year. And like I think PSG being in that place, they're not going to get credit for it, but they're going to be in that place.
PSG
And
winning a Champions League though before Mbappe, or even if they win it in general without him, I think that does impact his legacy.
well, I think his legacy is already impacted by the fact that he couldn't win it with PSG at
And it gets
all.
worse if PSG wins it without him.
Yeah, but I think at this point his calculus is it's time to make the big move and make the real big money, and
It's less than what he
following.
makes at PSG though.
But no, but he'll make the endorsements he's going to make, and he now gets to be Zidane and Benzema, and he gets to be all those guys, and it's what he wants, and fine, whatever. But like you start to see it in like Warren Zaire-Emery is a
Yeah.
great example of this. Warren Zaire-Emery is 18, and the QSI takeover happened I think when he was 7,
Yeah.
maybe.
2011. Do the
So
math.
he
2012.
he is one of those guys of that generation who grew up with PSG being what PSG is and not sort of what it was. In other words, I think it means more to that next generation of guys that are younger who have been around and have seen, the Neymar PSG and the Zlatan PSG and a team that's been dominant and been good. And like you're getting into that next generation now where PSG aren't going to have to overspend for, mercenaries who are only there because it's for a paycheck.
Exactly.
And maybe they fall in love with the club when they get there, but you're going to have people that actively want to play for PSG.
Hmm.
And again, the media is all behind that because they're stupid and they don't, and they're in Real Madrid's pocket and Barcelona pockets, and they don't have that vision of something that's really very obvious in front of their faces.
Yeah.
But, PSG is going to be fine. And I think for most fans, who are smart understand that PSG are going to be absolutely fine.
Yep.
And that this isn't like this big major loss. Like there isn't a fear that him going will like kill the team and they're not going to be any good anymore. And it's like that's just not true.
If we had like if Pochettino or Gaultier was still here, we were still being run by, I don't know, what's the old sporting director, Etero Henrique or something like
Leonardo.
that. Yeah, Leonardo. Yeah, if Leonardo was here and and Pochettino was here, we would be, in a corner crying somewhere. But we've got Campos, we've got Luis Enrique. We've got really really good young players who want to be at the club. It's going to be
Yeah.
just fine. And you're right. Soccer media is stupid and they don't understand this and they just want to point and laugh and make their memes. Like, oh, okay, fine, get your clicks, but like, you're stupid. You don't know what you're talking about. We're going to be just fine. We're actually happy that Mbappe is moving on because the headache is over. We're sad that we're losing his quality, but we're happy that we don't have to deal with the rumors every hour of every day.
Like we've done so many Kylian Mbappe
Oh my
podcasts.
God.
Like
I should go back and count them all.
yeah, but like that really does wear on a fan. Like, and when you don't have the rings
Starting
to
to get
show
gray
for it.
hair. I don't know if you
Yeah,
can see.
when you don't have the rings to show for it, it just makes it even that much more, annoying. It's like, and you know what? As I said before, as we wrap this up, I'm assuming in a
Yes.
few years he'll come back. Not as a player, but he'll come back to the park and he'll get the ovation and he'll be one of those all-time legends that can show up and fans will appreciate him. And, there'll be, again, a whole generation of people that grew up watching Mbappe at PSG and are all PSG players because they watched Mbappe. Like that's all that's going to pay off in years to come. But right now, it's not where we are. So it's like, just leave us alone. Let us, you know, start the business of, sort of becoming a real club. It's, and really building that club up to a place where, we don't have to rely on the big star that benevolently graces us with his presence. So we'll see.
We'll see. Up next for PSG on Wednesday, May 15th, they travel to Nice, and
No one will
then,
watch that game.
well, and I'd play Mbappe full 90 minutes. I mean, he's leaving, he's whatever. Play him 90 minutes every match. Give the fans in Nice, they probably bought their ticket, they want to see him. Play him 90 minutes there, and then Sunday, May 19th, PSG travels to Metz for the final Ligue 1 match of
And
the
no one will
season.
watch that. No one will watch that game either.
Oh, yeah, true. I'll watch it, but again, I think Mbappe should play them both. And then we've got the big one, May 25th, Coupe de France final,
Yeah,
PSG
people
Lyon.
will watch that.
People will watch that. Mbappe's going to play. So we got a few more matches. I know this kind of sounds like end of the season wrap up, but we've got 3 more matches and a trophy on the line. So we'll see how it goes. Mark, thanks for coming on, sharing your thoughts. I thought this was really good to talk it out. I haven't had a chance to do it, but I think we covered it well with how fans are feeling about Mbappe. Sort of like the reception at the match today. It's sort of
Yeah.
mixed. You want to cheer, but you're also like kind of angry. So I think we covered all grounds. Any final words before we let you run?
No, I mean, okay, I'll just say that I'm just trying to think of if there's anything new that I want to say that isn't just repeating myself. But I think that, this has been a very long 7 years, 7 years. And I started up with you guys pretty much right as all of this was starting to happen. So like we've pretty much seen all of this and covered all of this. And um it is sort of the end of an era, I think, so to speak. And just sort of acknowledge that sort of we're in the new era of PSG now. And you covered the Zlatan era, we've covered the Neymar Mbappe era, and now we're in, I guess, this Zaire-Emery, Barcola. I don't even know what we'll call this era at the end of the day. Maybe
The
it's the
Vitinha
Luis
era.
Enrique,
The Vitinha era.
maybe the Luis Enrique era. I don't know, but it does feel like we're sort of turning a page here, and I think that's also part of the relief is that, you know, you feel like the cycle's at an end and now you can sort of focus on the new thing. So
I think you're right.
I think it's excitement. I do think there's a level of excitement here that, you know, we should all acknowledge.
Yeah, definite excitement. And just for me to wrap up, absolutely. Thank you, Kylian Mbappe, for all the contributions, the trophies. You've certainly helped elevate PSG globally. Here in the U.S., Mark, I'm sure you see kids wearing PSG, and it's almost always an Mbappe. You see a couple Messi in there, but Mbappe's on the cover of FIFA. Like he in America, like it was kind of cool that people knew a player who was at your club. Even though the league may not be as popular, he was certainly popular, and they knew who he was. And so for that, I'll sort of be sad that he's moving on, and people won't associate such a great player with your club anymore. But on the horizon, there's a lot of promise. We mentioned Zaire-Emery and Vitinha and Barcola and some others. There's a lot of promise there to look forward to. You look at the future of PSG, I think it's bright. Who knows? I mean, maybe PSG will be building a new stadium in the future. That's something that's possible. I know leaving the park would be sad, but it might be something that's necessary. So there'll be a lot of changes. We're kind of closing this chapter. We're opening up a new one. And hopefully, myself and you and everyone else at PSG Talk will be along for the ride. So Kylian Mbappe moving on, his last home match at the park. We've sort of been anticipating it for years now. It's finally here. It's happened. And I was just watching a video of him and his brother and his mom and dad taking a picture. I think they're going to get back and reflect on this. And I think it's always difficult when you leave something that you've been a part of for so long. So I think there will be a sort of longing for those good times at PSG when he is at Real Madrid, because I don't think it's going to be as smooth sailing as maybe he or others think. So we'll definitely keep an eye on that. Like I said, we've got 3 more matches in the season. And we got a big trophy. Coupe de France haven't won it for 2 seasons, so hopefully we can pull that off. So anyway, Mark, thanks for coming on. Thanks for sharing your thoughts. Thank you to everyone out there who listened to this show. And
Au revoir for now.